Jerry.
Good morning.
How you doing?
I'm fine. I'm hoping that Dale is doing okay. I did hear that he made it to the airport.
At least he's at the airport. Huh?
It was quite an adventure. He needed to be out the door by 3:00 this morning, so not everybody was up. I mean,
it's a tough decision of which way to go. I mean, you either go up north around the ferry, down through Olympia. I mean, you just never know. But yeah, you got to get through all this morning traffic for sure.
Right.
All right. Last night you were up in the North End, right? For this FEMA map thing. What's going on with the latest on this?
Well, I had a personal interest, as you well know. I have two properties that are within the flood zone.
Yeah.
My house, which is, I have a letter of map amendment, which is called a LOMA, which removed it from the floodplain.
Okay.
And you do that through an elevation certificate. You have it surveyed and blah, 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 to say the exact elevation of the house and how that compares to the floodplain. Well, my lender recently had told me that I was moved out of the floodplain. So anyway, I got all of that resolved last night. My lender gave me a document that had another address on it that removed me from my letter. Yeah, it's really convoluted, but this is the thing with flood insurance and the whole gamut, and the importance of the meeting last night is people don't understand it.
Yeah.
They just know that somebody does a flyby and says, you're in the floodplain. So the meeting was well attended, and I am going to get the presentation, the PDF presentation, and we'll post that on the website for people to take a look at. It's got contact information and whatnot on it. But they had, you could get a copy of your parcel compared to the floodplain. So we had resources to do that. There were engineers there that could help try to explain why your lot was in a floodplain, or confirm that your letter of map adjustment was still current.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and there's different things, and depending on how long ago you've had your map, you've done your survey in that, and how the surveyor checked the boxes, in some cases like mine, it was kind of an apples and oranges thing. But so I got that all resolved, and then there was a presentation, which we'll have on the website, and then there were people to answer questions about insurance, about floodplains, just the general what it's about. The city and the county were both there as local resources, because bless FEMA's PPIC and HART, your first line of defense is your local resource. Mm-hmm. And it's like, they're not flood experts, floodplain experts, but supposedly they have access to the same maps, and you should have Jason Dose in, because he's going like, I'm not.
Was he there last night?
He was. Okay. He opened up the meeting, but this is another one where big government pushes down their responsibilities to the locals, and so you're getting all the calls first that you probably have a 10% chance of answering before you push them off to FEMA. But there were all kinds. There's a whole table of information and pamphlets for you to pick up, read, utilize, identify the resources. There was some, because hiring a surveyor to do a survey and get a certificate of elevation is expense to the homeowner or property owner. But there was another form there, which I picked up a copy of it. I haven't had a chance to really review it, where you can take a look at the flood map, and if your structure isn't in the floodplain, you don't need to buy flood insurance. You can, and typically it would be at a lower rate.
And that's kind of how yours was, right? Your lot, the parcel, the corner of the parcel was either still in the map or not, but the actual house is not.
Right. And, I told him, I says, what gee whiz is me is I've got a 15-foot bulkhead. The high water line is about 8 foot up that 15-foot bulkhead. That gives me another 7 feet just to go over the bulkhead. And then oh, by the way, the house is up another 2 to 4 feet. So, and for the water to go over the bulkhead, with the exception of wave action, the whole canal would have to raise that high.
Yeah.
I'm going, how would this ever happen? But there's different areas. One, if you're on a beach where there's a lot of wave action, you get waves and crashing waves into that's a higher risk area than where I am, because we're kind of east-west, and we might get waves from the northeast, but they're never crashing. They can be 3 to 4 feet or more and still not crash on our bulkhead. So that was kind of an interesting little tidbit. And then the other thing that FEMA's doing is they're going around and they're there's different elevations. Not everybody's sea level.
Right.
And so the calculations are different for, say, Idaho than it would be for me, and I'm different than it would be for over on the coast. So there's that mean line, and, there's just tons and tons of calculations that FEMA has gone through, including earthquakes, including tsunamis, and there was a brief presentation there from DNR about that, and all the information. Information overload, if indeed you fell into one of those categories.
So when people were milling about after or starting to walk out, did they look like their heads were full of information? They weren't quite sure what they just learned?
Well, yeah. I think that people, the majority of the people that were there have dealt with this because they're on the water or a lake. I mean, they did address lakes as well, because I think some of the people on the lakes were affected positively. They were taken out of the flood plain.
Oh.
So then that removed the requirement for the flood insurance by their lenders. You can still buy it, but it'd be at a reduced rate.
How long does it take to get into effect? Do you know? Is it 30 days? Because I think it's not like you can call. You see that there's floods coming, so you call your insurance guy, says, "I need flood insurance," and then the next day it's active. No, doesn't it take a while?
Well,
depending.
The interesting thing with flood insurance is the only place that you can purchase flood insurance is from the government, and it's non-refundable. So if you purchase it and don't need it, let's say these people found out they were outside the floodplain now. Great, I'm going to get a rebate on my insurance. Nope.
Isn't that how all insurance works, though? I mean, there's not a lot of refundable insurance, is there?
No, well, you can get a refund on that portion of the year that hasn't started or gone by. In other words, so you buy it on an annual basis, and let's say it's from January. So you're in March. Well, I still have another 9 months that I should be credited and get my money back. It doesn't work that way. And the other thing that I'm going to take a look at is, how do they actually set the rates? Because while I'm not right smack dab in the middle of the biggest flood and my opportunity for flooding is less, are those rates reduced or calculated? Because every time I've thought or have been told I need flood insurance on my house on the canal as well as here, it's $2,500 or more. It's not getting less. And I'm going, wait a minute, what will I get in return for that flood insurance? The answer I got last night was they'll refund, or they will cover as much as $250,000 for the structure, and then there may be something for the contents. But it's all proportionate to the value of your property. So my question, and one I'll be seeking an answer for, is that how is that set? If I have a property that's worth $100,000, would I get $100,000 if my property is destroyed? And then, or will I get a portion of that? In other words, sometimes it's not 100%. And obviously it would be total devastation. But, rumors that I've heard, the the average FEMA insurance payout was like $32,000. Well,
wow.
yeah, when you have properties of 200 and valued at 250 and up, that's not a whole lot. It doesn't do a whole lot for you. So it'll be real interesting to see. I do want to just touch on an interesting meeting that I attended in a briefing for the Mason County Commission, along with the Squaxin tribe. And it had to do about the Hearst decision.
Yep.
We've heard that a lot in the news. Where is there adequate water supply? So in this guarantee that there's adequate water supply, if I build, for development in that, it's more complex than that. Because we don't know how much water is actually there. So the tribe who has probably the lion's share of the water rights are into conserving that water, which if we can't provide water, you stop development. And so while we're not at odds, the commission and the tribe are going to work together to try to resolve this issue. It could really stymie growth in rural areas. So, because we depend, if you stop and look, we have city water, but outside of the city, everything's wells. And anyway, so that's going to be interesting to follow and for people to understand, I think, because water is a major resource of ours. We all need it. And we need to protect it, but where's that balance between that and growth? And as a rural community, I'm afraid that's going to affect us a whole lot more for development. All we need is one more blow, one more. This is a reason why you can't, to stop any economic growth. So I think that's an important thing. And then next week, I get an opportunity to serve Meals on Wheels at the Senior Center. Yeah. Sue Patterson, Commissioner Patterson of the Port, invited me when, I attended a port meeting, and, well, what are you doing? I thought you were retired. Oh, no, we're ambassadors, and we're staying in touch with the community. And she said, well, great, you must have time on your hands. Of course, she invited me and Dale. I said, well, I don't know if you want Lefty Louie serving, but I'll certainly invite him along.
Definitely have someone there to share stories with throughout the day.
Yeah, anyway, and then the Jolene Black, who we know her from, she used to be at what's the place there on Harmony Hill.
Okay.
She used to be at Harmony Hill. She's working for Senior Center or Seniors of South Sound. And so she's the one that actually scheduled me, and she said, really, the experience that you need is to go out and deliver meals to those people who don't come in. Yeah. She says it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I don't know if I'm ready for that yet, but certainly I should have the opportunity and time to put towards that as well, besides being the concerned citizen at the commission meetings.
Well,